Back in 2023, I was covering the DLCs for the Saints Row reboot. These consisted of the Heist and Hazardous, Ketchum's Murder Circus, and the LARPing DLC. I played all three really extensively. I made videos talking about the Heist and Hazardous and the update that came alongside it. I made a video or two touching on the LARP DLC and the update that came out with that pack. Yet for Ketchum's Murder Circus, I made one short 5-minute initial impressions on the DLC pack, and that's it. So why? I was fairly positive in that video, so surely I was enjoying the pack at the time. But if only that was the case. You see, right after putting that video out, I started to grind away at the DLC pack to unlock the achievements for the game, and oh my god, I hated it. And I mean big time. It, no joke, is the worst thing in gaming I've had to slog through to complete. It's far too long, it's far too repetitive, and so on and so forth. So why the hell bring that up in 2025? Well, I got a PC recently, and obviously, I got the reboot on it. Now, when I got the reboot, I bought pretty much every DLC so I could make videos, apart from Murder Circus. I was like, nope, that is still not worth my money, even for content. But recently an offer came out, and it was like $2, so I was like, you know what? I'll pick up Murder Circus, I'll try it out. This game mode's actually so bad, though. Like, I'm not even just trolling, like, it's really bad. Like, I've played some shit in my life, man. But this is, like, shit. Should I buy the DLC? This one? No. No, 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 no. No, no, no. The DLC are on sale right now. Heist and Hazardous, it's worth like $1, okay? The LARP one, $1 or $2. This, don't touch it. Run! Run as fast as you can and never play it in your life. Be happy. Even if you like the reboot, okay? Even if you like the reboot, you won't like this, I promise you. There is no fun to be had here. It, no joke, was even worse than I remembered it being. So in this video, I want to break down how horrid this pack is, and talk about how great it actually could have been. You know, just for fun. It's not like there's a dev team to listen to the feedback now, but as a community, we can still enjoy shit-talking some good old Saints Row 2022. The biggest crux of this DLC pack comes down to the biggest problem of the game overall. It is centered around combat. Now, the combat of Saints Row 2022, in my opinion, is the worst thing about the game, even to this day. I mean, even down to something as simple as just aiming and looking around, it feels janky, it feels awkward. There's too much aim acceleration, it always feels like there's way too much dead zone even when you adjust it. The general controls of the game aren't set right. Overall, shooting people and engaging in combat in Saints Row 2022, it's not the most fun thing in the world. Moving past that, you've also got the execution system, which is where you need to do a little executioner to fill up your health bar. Now, when you're in the actual game, this isn't too bad, I suppose. You can kind of get around it, and if you're not turned off by all these really lame executions, which personally I'm not, I don't mind it, you can actually find it kind of cool and a neat way to regain health and an interesting system. Like, even though it doesn't feel like Saints Row, you can definitely get something out of this system if you can get into it, of course. But when you play Murder Circus, it's generally more competitive, and it's also set to be a bit harder than the base game in general. So this whole running around and finding an enemy to do an executioner on goes from slightly cool if you're into it, to just unbelievably tedious regardless. There are too many times in a gunfight where you should be able to take out the enemies fairly easily, but you realise you're on low health, so you have to kind of strategize yourself around them to try and get an executioner off, and then you don't, and then you die, and it's like, if you just had normal regen, you'd be able to kill all these enemies and move on. So okay, that's pretty bad, right? They also turned up the difficulty, as I say, for this, so the game's a little bit harder than it is in the base game, and you have to kind of adjust to that. It's nothing major, but it will catch you off guard if you're not prepared for it. But okay, it is what it is. Kinda deal with it. Let's talk about the base weapons of all our characters then, before we start to dive into the whole slog of the whole character system. Let's keep it on combat for a moment. So our 4 characters start with different weapons. Now, they're not all bad, a lot of them are just like pistols and stuff and very generic weapons. But there's a guy called Artemis, and he's the one I want you to pay the most attention to here. He starts with a fucking musket or something, a hunting rifle. I don't know what it is, a Kar 98. He starts with a slow-ass bolt-action rifle. Okay, this is bad enough, because it's like, alright, there's plenty of enemies to shoot. It's pretty annoying, but surely this thing's got to pack a punch. Not really, it doesn't do much damage, and it's like, damn. Okay, that's frustrating, but whatever, it's cool. It turns out that he also only starts with 2 health bars. In the gameplay you see on screen, I've got him upgraded, so he'll have more health bars at the start, but he starts with 2 small health bars. Okay, so we've got a character with a really weak first weapon, and really weak health system. But hang on, this weapon shoots 1 bullet every time before rechambering, so now the janky aiming controls are going to come into play, and really throw you off your game. So it's like, okay, this character is now becoming really insufferable to use. So you'll go over to one of these weird Murder Circus caskets, hit the button, a bunch of enemies will come towards you, and then you're in a position where it's like, hang on, you're being swarmed by enemies, you've got a weak gun, absolutely no health, and you can barely hit a shot because the aiming's so janky. And before you tell me to just get good, okay? It's an aiming issue, okay? I'm not struggling with the game. I've beat this DLC entirely. It's not a skill issue. The aiming just sucks. The aiming will suck regardless of whether I'm doing a flawless run and I haven't been hit once, or whether I'm having the worst game of my life. The aiming system in general is broken and scuffed. You will die a lot with this character, and you have to keep dying over and over just so you can level him up inch by inch, so you'll finally be powerful enough to take on these Murder Circus caskets. And you will have to be using the dot boxes to get as many weapons as you can, because his musket absolutely sucks. You can't go head on with the enemies, you have to constantly dance around them because they do way too much damage and you've got no health. Your weapon does pitiful damage and shoots one bullet every time, and you find yourself tapping away at enemies one by one by one. And it goes on for way too long. And then you have to do that over and over and over and over and over again, just so you can level him up to finally take down the big boss. Which, by the way, returning character, Professor Genki. Yay. Pretty cool, I'll admit. Okay, Genki coming back was a pretty big bonus for me. I was pretty hyped when I saw him. I was like, yeah, it's Professor Genki. But hang on, let's take a look at this achievement for a second. You have to kill Professor Genki with a groin shot. Okay, so now we have an unbelievably tanky enemy that has way too much health. You have Artemis with a gun that shoots one bullet at a time, with way too little health, and a damage output that's pitiful. You've got a janky, broken aiming system, and you want me to pinpoint a shot on Professor Genki's dick so I can get my trophy? Yeah, it's not good. That's bad. That is a really bad system. I don't get why on earth they would think that that would work. And that's just one character, okay? But that's by far the worst, to be fair to the game. The rest of the characters are fine. I didn't find them anywhere near as tedious. They all come a bit more bulky and a bit more health, and I don't know, I just didn't struggle with them anywhere near as much. It also helps that I didn't find them anywhere near as irritating as Artemis. Fuck Artemis. But I mean, even that's just me talking about the combat. That's not even me diving into the problems with the DLC. That's just talking about what the DLC is based around. That's how bad it is. Fundamentally, at its core, basing it around the weakest elements of the game has had me ranting for nearly 10 minutes. But okay, let's just proceed and talk about the other things that really fucking suck about this DLC pack. So Murder Circus Island is already pretty small. It's pretty condensed, and it's kind of confusingly laid out. I get that that's the point of it, so I'm not going to attack it too much for this. The whole point is that it's a little maze, it's a murder circus, you gotta go around each corner and try and find your way around a map. It's fine. Until these artificial barriers of green fucking farts stop me from going to where I want to go. Like, I get it, okay? You need to have barriers around the area so the player doesn't escape. I'm not stupid, I understand how game dev works. You need to have ways to stop the player from going out of bounds. But like, you could have at least given us the entire island to have this murder circus on. Not just one small segment that you want us to stick to and not allow us to traverse the rest of the map. No, I know what you're thinking. Perhaps you're going, but that would be unbalanced. The game wouldn't work. The island is not big. It is tiny. It is a small district even by Saints Row standards. So allowing us to traverse the entire thing would not have been a problem. By limiting the areas the player can explore, this DLC only becomes more and more repetitive and more irritating. It's already got a tricky layout, and you make it 10 times worse by not allowing me to get familiar with the entire section of the map. I feel like I'm condensed to one little mini-map that I can play around on, and that sucks. Okay, before we go too ham on this DLC, let me talk about some very few positives, because I feel like I've been going ham on it, and I've still got so much more I want to go into, but it's not all bad, honestly. First things first, if you play this sparingly from time to time, you can enjoy it. Your first couple games won't be that bad. Honestly, when I did my initial impressions, I played it and I really enjoyed it. I thought, you know what, this is fun. Learning all these different playstyles, using all these different weapons. Yeah, it's kind of more of the same, but at least there's something new. There's a bit of a gimmick to this. I can get behind it, and what are these ketchum coins? Oh boy, I can't wait to rank up and collect those. I'm sure they'll unlock me some really cool rewards and stuff, which, to be fair, at times they do. And yeah, it was like, wow, they've revamped the island. It's like, cool. This is actually fun. It's like a little game mode. It reminds me a bit of Horde mode. So that was actually pretty cool. I've got to say, I really enjoyed that. Another thing I enjoyed was the difficulty scaling. They did make it hard. They said they'd make it harder, and yeah, they did. It was not an easy game. I do think a lot of it's artificial difficulty, in terms of, again, of just the weird combat system not working for it too much, and that making it a bit harder than it normally would be. But even generally, the enemies feel like they take a few more bullets to kill, they seem to dish out even more damage than usual, and I have to admit, the game at times can be a little bit challenging, so hats off to them for that. I can semi-congratulate them on the whole menu system they have here, the Ketchum's Boot Coin Emporium, or whatever the fuck it's called. There's a pretty neat upgrade system going on here, and I can appreciate them trying to balance this whole mode and giving the player actual rewards to unlock. It is pretty neat. It's pretty silly, though, at times where it's like, you can buy this upgrade, and you get a chance to unlock it in-game. So it's like, you spend coins on an upgrade, and every upgrade you get means that the chances of you getting one you might want become slightly slimmer each time because there's so many to pick from. A little bit lame, and it means that when you unlock something, you're not even guaranteed finding it in your next run. But overall, I can congratulate them on trying to at least experiment with this and having an upgrade system that's very different to anything Saints Row has tried before. And also, there's some pretty cool cosmetics. That's it. That's all the good goods I've really got for this DLC pack. I suppose at least there's something good to it. At least if you have got the DLC or the expansion pass, you'll get something out of it. But yeah, you need to, if you are going to play this unbelievably sparingly. Do not grind at it. You'll want to blow your brains out. But do take advantage of stuff like the new difficulty, try and adjust to it, and check out some of the stuff in the Ketchum's Emporium shit, because there are some cool upgrades there. Alright, that's it. Back to me complaining again. So one of the biggest problems I have are the characters we get to choose from. I think Flippy put it really well. Why are we playing as some random dev's OC instead of something kind of connected to the lore? Now, Flippy goes on to say that maybe the more detached from the lore that this mode is, the better it is, but I just disagree. I think his initial idea of us playing as the Saints was actually really cool, but I've got a different idea, and I think it would work even better. So one of the least fleshed out things in this game are actually the enemy gangs. Now you see, Saints are pretty fleshed out. They're insufferable, but at least you kind of know bits and pieces about each character. Like, who the hell is Sergio? Where is he from? What are his motives? Who is this guy? Or the idols. Who is this collective? Who are they individually? What are their names? Why are they just collective members? Why are they fancy? Why do they get the fancy helmets? What's the difference between them and a base lieutenant? My point is, the enemy gangs in this game are really underdeveloped, aside from Marshall, which I think is at least fairly developed. But this is my point. This is a great opportunity for them to have expanded on the really underdeveloped gangs. Picture this. Instead of being a random soldier, you're a grunt for an enemy gang. They actually attempted this by having a random Panteros soldier, which I thought was cool, but unfortunately, they didn't decide to touch on any lore, they just kind of let you play as a Panteros, which I thought was really lame. Imagine if the roster, instead of looking like a bunch of random characters, was an Idols member, a Panteros member, a Marshall member, and maybe a member of the Nawali's gang. This would have been perfect. We could finally get some insight into the backstory of the Idols, talk about the recruitment process, how they managed to find this cult, how they got so many people believing in them, what they actually stand for, other than, we ruined their anarchy. Who the fuck are you? Or maybe we could have learned a bit more about the Panteros, why they're such a family, why they have such an obsession with cars, how did they get their startup, why do they operate out of the Scorpion factory, do they own the car company, have they taken over the factory, what's their relevance to the Saints Row plotline, why are there Scorpion cars in Steelport in Saints Row 3, etc, etc. I'm not saying they could have answered all this, or that they should have answered all this, but these are questions that the player is still pondering to this day if they actually care enough about this game. And this would have been the perfect opportunity for Murder Circus to, whilst we're kicking ass, give us some backstory, give us some lore about the enemy factions of this game. But as it stands, there's just a bunch of random characters going into a fighting ring and hoping to come out on top. It's kind of lame. And it's not that I don't like these characters. Actually, ironically, I kind of like a couple of these characters more than I do the main cast of the game. It's just what really bugs me is the game is so rapidly underdeveloped and so underfleshed out in so many areas. They should have taken this opportunity to flesh out some more things and finally fix some of the damn plot holes they've made with this game's story. I would love to have known a bit more about why Ketchum hosts this Murder Circus, what you get by winning it. You know, why are all these random competitors going into a fighting ring to battle it out? I mean, what, is it simply just for boosting your score on a leaderboard? And if so, why? What do you get by being top score? I don't know. It could have been fleshed out way more. Maybe they could have incorporated it into the other gang's recruitment processes. Maybe it's like, if you win top 5 leaderboards, the idols will contact you. Or maybe you can try it for Marshall. Or I don't know, maybe the Panteros will give you a free car or something. I just feel like the whole point of this DLC is pointless. It's a big nothing burger. I don't know why I want to win, and I just feel a bit silly for being there. Like, even if you go back to Professor Genki's Super Epical Reality Climax shit, right? You play for money. You obviously go for the cash prize. You want the money. You want the respect. That's the whole point of it at the very end. There's a bunch of prizes. There's trophies and everything. You kind of understand why you're there. It's to make cash. But in this game, you get Doc Ketchum coins. Like, what the fuck is that? To be fair, that point's probably me just being a bit pedantic. But I just don't see the point of making such a big mode seem so important and being like the game mode you have to win to not explain at all the point of winning. Okay, hell, it is what it is. Maybe they just didn't want to put a ton of plot behind a random game mode and they just kept it simple. I can get that. But one thing I can't understand is why no co-op? I'm just going to be real, okay? I'm going to be real with you for a second. This entire game mode strikes me as some like weird cancelled battle royale gimmick. You spawn on an island and you have to take out every other contestant and be the last one standing. Yeah, where have I heard that before? And like, a lot of this game was developed during the big battle royale hype craze, so I kind of get it, but it's like, you'd think with them trying to clearly cash in a little bit on that market, and you know, the whole spawn on an island, kill who you can, you'd think about co-op. You'd think co-op would be something to consider. Hell, do you want to know what would actually have been really fucking cool, Volition? Something that I would have loved to have seen you guys do? How about you have a separate mode of Doc Ketchum's Murder Circus, where the 4 contestants spawn on each corner of the island. At which point, it's up to them to go and attack each other. They can loot up and find other weapons, or they can go straight for the kill. How fun. Maybe if they can cross to the other side of the island, they can pick up a health buff or something. I don't know. You could have made it really cool. Maybe if they win a round, they can spawn the next round with an extra gun or something. They could have done something really interesting here, and finally brought back some form of PvP mode. When they started doing their Discord Q&As back in the day, they kind of hinted at them wanting to do multiplayer. Their exact words are something like, Saints Row 2022 is the basis, we want to expand going forward, wink wink nudge nudge, we want multiplayer. This would have been like the perfect opportunity to add it. Why not have a few people spawn at each corner of the map and battle it out? Then you can get your whole battle royale gimmick, but more importantly, the people who've wanted multiplayer for so long can actually have a way of playing it. I mean, people have been complaining for years about 2-player co-op. Even with this game, when it was announced that this game only has 2-player co-op, that sucked. I just don't get why you wouldn't use this game mode, which is already quite basic, to expand upon it and have 4 players in there battling it out. That could have been really cool, man. I mean, sure, it'd have been clunky as hell with this dodgy-ass aiming system. It probably wouldn't have been perfect, but man, I don't know. I feel like having some sort of multiplayer here would have really benefited the game. I just feel like it could have been really interesting having 4 players on the map, fighting it out between NPCs and themselves, trying to be the last one standing, using the NPCs in the middle of combat to regain health so they can get an edge in the gunfight against the other players. I don't know, man. That seems to me like a better opportunity than this stupid Doc Ketchum shit. Oh, here's another one, man. Why couldn't we use our main characters? I actually thought about this, right? If they are just going to give us some random-ass OCs and not have any sort of lore connections, simply just give us 4 characters to play with that are dressed kind of funkily and have a unique weapon, they could have just done that with our base character. And, like, I get that they tried to make it into the story that's like, you already entered once, you can't enter again, but that's stupid. That's like game dev logic for trying to explain why you shouldn't be able to use your character. But they actually don't have a reason, so they just do a little, oh, yeah, you've already entered, only 1 go per person, you only get 1 spin at the wheel, which is dumb. I don't get the point of that. I feel like it'd just been way cooler to go in as our own boss, get a bunch of really unique buffs, and maybe learn a bit more about our boss's character, why he got to where he was, why did he join Marshall? Again, even though our Saints are probably the most expanded upon thing in the game, which is sad to think about, they're still incredibly underdeveloped. I feel like they should have shined a lot more spotlight during this DLC on the characters whilst you're playing this fun mode. I'm not gonna lie, guys, you are here for ages. I haven't even dived into that yet. You are here in this DLC for so long. It would have been so beneficial for us to have some form of character development, some form of lore to learn whilst we're playing. As it stands, you've got a random ass character nobody cares about, spawning in on a map, completing waves upon waves of enemies to unlock more rewards to use on that same character no one cares about. There's no music in the background you can listen to other than the game's soundtrack, which, by the way, I'm not a fan of this one personally, which was really irritating for me considering it just plays continuously on loop. I don't know, I just feel like a lot of decisions were made here that were really anti the player. Many decisions that I feel like anyone who would play the mode would understand, yeah, by doing that, this makes it more and more unfun. And the sad thing is, I can see the vision. I actually can. I can see what they were going for. They wanted something to be slightly more competitive. They wanted something to be a bit more like, oh, you've got to go in and you've got to get the best score you can. Play to your strengths. Don't lose to your weaknesses, you know. You've got to switch up your playstyle here. You can't just go running and gunning. I get it. But, like, their own combat system betrays them so much that, like, it just doesn't work. It just feels janky. Alright, let's just continue. So the whole point of this DLC, right, is to open these 4 boxes around the map. That's it. You'll be doing that over and over and over and over and over again, and that's the entire point of the DLC. You gotta open 4 boxes and get your rewards. So goody. You open the boxes, a bunch of enemies spawn, they chase you and try to kill you. That's it. Now, it's kind of one-dimensional, but it does have some cool stuff to it. As you open these boxes, your character gets a buff, and so does the enemies. So you have to kind of strategically plan which box you want to open. Are you sure you want to open the one that gives the enemies extra armor so early on, when you could open something else and not have to deal with armored enemies for the next 3 boxes? Yeah, that's kind of the whole thing. You get the gimmick if you understand that. I'll admit, it's pretty cool. It's nice to strategize in a Saints Row game and play something that's not completely, you know, brain dead running and gunning, as I say. But again, I just feel like it's so wasted upon this mode to have something actually kind of interested in it. Because whilst you're sitting there strategizing and going, yeah, you know what, we can do that, the janky-ass aiming's going to let you down anyway. Or maybe this time, it'll be the janky-ass fog you managed to run into. Or maybe you'll get stuck in an execution. Maybe you need to heal and you just won't be able to find an NPC to go and grab some health from. There's just so many problems with it that it becomes so unfun to play as you're going through it. I feel like even if you disregard my whole multiplayer idea, having an extra player would have been incredibly beneficial. Just one other person to be going through this with. That alone would have made this 100 times more fun. I'm telling you, I'd much rather be doing this with Godzilla at my side as we kick ass on this random ass shitty island than going through it by myself, listening to this terrible soundtrack, playing this kind of janky gameplay. Still though, after all this, all the complaints I have, I think the worst part about this whole DLC is simply how long it goes on for. Quite frankly, this DLC is twice as long as it needed to be. For each character, you'll be looking at upwards of at least 8 to 9 games. That means you'll be playing 40 rounds of this, on average, to get your characters maxed out. And honestly, I just don't think the gameplay is fun enough to keep going back to it for that long. The only reason I can see legitimately anyone beating Murder Circus is for the achievements, and it is a pitiful experience at that. You will not enjoy your time with this DLC. It is not fun to go through. It is a slog, as I've said many times in this video, and it's just way too long. Even with the characters that have the better starting weapons and aren't really too hard to handle, for example that weird Justice person I forgot the name of, they're great. Their starting pistol's pretty good, you can get a ton of damage done, and you don't really struggle anywhere near as much as the other characters. Even for a character like that, by the time you reach level 5, 6 of the character, you're bored. You're like, man, I don't really want to do this anymore. This just isn't fun. And even with the upgrades, they're not enough to keep you coming back. Yeah, there's some cool ones, but it's not cool enough or game-changing enough to really have, well, any sort of players coming back for it. They're just going to go, well, that's neat, and then realize that they have to use those things in the exact same game mode that they've just played. And they'll have to do that again. And they'll have to do that again. And as I say, towards the back ends of the levels of these characters, man, you just don't want to play it anymore. Like, all jokes aside, I've sat here talking about how great this mode would be with co-op. It needs to have co-op, it should have co-op. If this mode actually did have co-op, I don't know if I could find someone else to play the game mode with me, because of how boring it is. Yo, Godzilla, I found a mod, and we can play Murder Circus in co-op. You down?
No,
Oh,
no,
dude, come on.
no. I'm not playing that murder crap.
But there's a mod.
Jesus Christ. I don't care there's a co-op mod. It's the Murder Circus. The goddamn Murder Circus. No, please, no, no.
See what I mean? You see what this DLC does to people? It hurts them, man. This DLC fucks with you, bro. That was real. You thinking that's a bit? No, that was real. That was genuine passion right there. That was genuine passion. My point is, as fun as this DLC can be for your first couple attempts, and as fun as it was for my first initial impressions, it does not offer anywhere near enough for the player to come back for as much as the DLC requests, especially when there's achievements locked behind what is hours of effectively the same 5-minute game mode over and over and over again. It is nowhere near fresh enough each run to be playing it as much as the game wants you to, and that is the biggest problem. Combine that with the janky combat, and the mediocre upgrade system that doesn't really offer anywhere near enough, the terrible characters and game design, the lack of innovation, the lack of character expanded upon, and the random OCs we have to play as. Combine that with the lack of co-op, the lack of any sort of multiplayer at all, the fact they lock off half the island to the player, and even when you do manage to get around the map, you're just opening random boxes for hordes of enemies to spawn. Quite frankly, it strikes me as an unimaginative version of Saints Row 3's Horde mode. Think about that. Saints Row 3's Horde mode strikes me as a more imaginative version of Doc Ketchum's Murder Circus. This is Saints Row 3 we're talking about here. Oh, goddamn. It's bad. It's really bad. Don't play it. Honestly, value your time. I would, honest to God, recommend you play the LARP DLC over this. I would rather you go and play Enter the Dominatrix. I'd rather you go get blue-balled with Corporate Warfare. I would rather you, quite frankly, do anything else with your time than revisit the worst Saints Row DLC to ever exist. The main reason, when I reviewed this a while back, I did one video on it, is because I didn't realize how hard it would be for me to gather the information to make a full-scale review. That's how bad it was. I went into this DLC pack, all the way back in 2023 now, optimistic, going, I'll make an initial impressions video, then I'll unlock everything the game wants me to unlock, and I'll make a full review, and I couldn't do it. I physically couldn't beat it. It took me months to get through Murder Circus on all the characters. And now that I don't have that Xbox anymore, and I've lost that game file, I may never do it again. When making this review, when playing the game, for this review alone, it hurt. It physically hurt me to play. It was just so unbelievably unfun. And if for a second, when watching this, you're thinking, it doesn't look that bad, I assure you, it is. This is coming from someone who legitimately likes the game. I like a lot of what this game has going for it. I think driving around is beautiful. I think the map is beautiful. I think cheats can be fun. I think the customization is awesome. I think the story, although a bit cringe, has some cool moments in it. Even the combat systems that everyone complains about, I at times can get behind. I don't mind the goofy health mechanics the game has in the base game, because it's not this overly fast-paced action horde-based gameplay. It's just a bit janky, and I can handle that. The only thing I can't handle is forcing an entire mode around the weakest part of a game. Stripping that same mode of its co-op features and offering it to the player as a new experience. It's not. It's a lackluster experience you've had before in this game, jankier than ever, with very little to offer. As I say, there's some good goods with this DLC. It's not all bad. As I say, the upgrade system's cool, you get some cool cosmetics out of it, and the characters aren't the worst thing in the world, even though they're just completely pointless. But this DLC is wasted opportunity at its core. It could have been anything else, and I'd have been happy. But I don't know, man. To remove co-op, to remove any sort of character connections, and just have 4 randoms spawning in on a section of an island that's already kind of shitty. Repeating the same 4 tasks. I don't know. I feel like in some weirder parts of the world it could be used as a torture technique. Fuck, man. Volition used it on me. I'm still playing this shit years later. Well, on that happy note, we'll end the review here. Yeah, it's bad. I'm sorry. I know that maybe I should have been a bit harsher back in the day. That's one of the things I regret about this game. You know, my coverage, man, I was getting used to it all. I was starting out fresh, and, you know, there are elements I overlooked for sure. And this was one of them. This is one of the ones I regret not sticking around on when making my video on it. I should have gone way harder in this DLC than I did. And years later, I'm righting that wrong by telling you now, this shit is the first in gaming's history I'm gonna give a 1 out of 10. Yeah, I'm serious. This DLC is bottom of the barrel for gaming for me. I do not want to play it when I'm playing it. I didn't want to play it when making a video to talk about how much I don't want to play it. It's bad. It is the worst DLC pack in the franchise by far, and it is by far Volition's greatest sin. You know what you did, Boone. You know what you did. Who was it then? I actually have no idea. I'm lost.
So I think this guy's like kind of a boss fight, if I'm not mistaken. Which so Shot Dog was the guy that I worked on.
I don't know. I don't know the name. What did he do?
It was like this guy in a hot dog suit that you fight on Boot Hill.
I
Like
don't
this
remember that
psychotic
at
hot
all.
dog suit man.
There was a hot dog mascot enemy. I feel like I
I think
remember
he's
that.
like a boss fight.
I'll be honest, Zach. Can I tell you a little secret?
Yeah.
Okay, don't take it to heart, okay?
No, yeah.
I hate that DLC. I can't. It's so.
How dare you?